Hey, it's Tim here. Let me ask you this. How many trees do you think exist within 1 kilometer of the Empire State Building? Pretty random question, I know, but actually Tableau have just released a feature called the Intersect function, which is going to allow us to answer this question right here in Tableau. You can see I've already set it up and I'm already using it, but I won't show you the answer until the end of the video, so stay tuned. And as ever, let's get stuck in and find out how this works. Okay, so we're here inside of Tableau Cloud. I'm going to do everything in the browser. If you just want to see how the function works, look at the timestamps to skip ahead to the various bits. It's important to show everyone every single step to show you how I got to the end result that I've just shown you. So let's go ahead and open up a new workbook. And we're going to do this in the browser, so everything is going to be a little bit wild. And we're actually going to upload a really large CSV file. I downloaded this. I'm going to put the website on screen, but I downloaded this from the New York Open Data website. It's got a tree census from 2015, and it contains all the trees in New York during that census. So when we go ahead and select open, in fact, I can't open the file because my face is over the button. We're going to have to go up and upload the file. So 225 megabyte file. Some people have asked me in the past, what is the file upload limit for Tableau Cloud? Well, I've tried this and I know this definitely works. So we'll go ahead and let this run, and then I'll just skip ahead to the end when it's just about to complete. Wonders of editing. Again, just one quick favor. 82% of the people watching this video in the last year aren't subscribed to the channel. And just to show you some context, nearly half of my subscribers came from this last year's worth of content. And if you look at how many views and how much time people are spending, I'm sure it's creating value somewhere. So if you really appreciate the content or would like to see even more of it at a better, higher quality standard, hit the sub button and enjoy the rest of the video. I have to say, it's really fast though. The future is definitely way better. The thing I love about Tableau is it's nice and easy and quick. That experience right there slowed me right down. So anyway, we've got the Tableau file connected. Everything is looking good. We're going to now start doing a little bit of setup. Now, in order to kind of work with this data, we've got a couple of things. We've got the latitude and longitude in the data set, so we can use those for what we want to do. But the point of interest that I'm actually going to use is not going to be in the data set. I'll come to this a little later on in the video. I'll explain some quirks with this feature, but for now, let's just push ahead with the feature. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a point of interest from Google Maps. So let's go ahead and go to Google Maps. So we go maps.google.com and we'll search for a building in New York. Let's call it the Empire State Building in New York. The nice thing about Google when you search for a building, if you go ahead and click on the building, is it does give you the latitude and longitude just up here. And this is exactly what I'm going to copy. So I'm going to copy that. And what we're going to do is go back to Tableau and I'm going to create a parameter and I'm going to put this into the parameter. The reason I'm doing this is because this feature has a quirk that I'll explain at the very end. And I'm going to create this as a list, and in the value, I'm going to paste that latitude and longitude in there. And then we can actually call this. The reason it's not actually saving this is because I'm pasting the value there. It's not recognizing that as a recognized float value, and then it's clearing it. So what we have to go do here is select string, paste it, and now it will actually let me rename this appropriately. So if we just double click that, we can call this Empire State. Okay. Let's go ahead and add another location. Where else can we go to in New York that's pretty famous? We can go to the Flatiron Building. I think Times Square is a pretty nice one. So let's go here to Times Square. Again, it will give us the lat and long just up here. We'll copy that and we'll go back to our tab and we'll add another value in here and we'll call this Times Square. Great, so we've got two values in here. Now, what we want to do with this, latitude and longitude from this URL is we want to be able to pass it in a bunch of spatial functions. The way you have to think about this is first we have to get our point of interest. Then we have to create a sort of a zone that we're going to search for. This zone will allow us to see if any other spatial objects match that particular item. And so the way the intersect function works is it currently lets you do 3 types of matches. It does points in polygons, lines on polygons and polygons in polygons. I think those are the three ones. If I've got that wrong, I'll correct it up on screen, but I'm pretty sure those are the three types. And so for this one, we're going to be doing the point in polygon matching. And so to do that, the polygon we're going to create is going to be a buffer, and the point we're going to use is this point of interest. And so we need to create a point for our point of interest for this to work. So because we're doing this through the parameter, I should actually rename this to call it POI. We are going to then create a calculation, and this calculation is super simple. We're simply going to take our parameter and we're going to pass it. Now, you might think, how am I going to pass this very easily? Well, Tableau has a couple of functions built in. I've done a whole playlist on functions, so go ahead and check that out. But if I go in here, you can see there's a string function and it's called split. And what that does is it lets you specify a way to split a string, and you can use a comma, whatever you want to use to do that. So for this one, because I had the comma in my latitude and longitude, I can actually do this. I can say split. You'll see it autocomplete. I can then go get my POI, which is a text field. Okay, and the way I want to split this is using the comma that's currently inside of that string, and then I want to return the first thing that it catches that matches that criteria. So that will give me the latitude. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to copy this, and once we've done this, the thing it's going to return is still going to be text. So we then need to actually make sure that we make this into a numerical value, which would mean we need it to be a float. The reason we need a float is because we need the decimal places. An integer is a whole number. So if I go here and I type in float, it's not actually under string, it's under numerical. But if I clear that and I type in float, I can't type. You'll see that it actually, if I double click that, it actually puts the function here in my calculation window. And then now I can highlight that, copy it and put it in here. Just make sure everything is good. Then I can go ahead and delete the first one. And so now that works. You'll see the calculation is valid and we're ready to go. And now I can actually copy this, select OK. And we're going to go ahead and actually duplicate this. I was going to copy and paste it, but instead we'll duplicate it and we'll go ahead here and say we'd like the second part of that as the longitude. Okay. Now that we've got the longitude, we can hit apply. You'll see that, oh, something's already named longitude. So we'll just call this, instead of the full name, we'll just call this long and hit apply. That's also worked perfect. And the way we can check this point of interest works is we can actually just go ahead to this latitude here, and we can tell Tableau that this actually has a geographical role of latitude, and we'll go to the longitude and tell that it has a geographical role of longitude as well. I can't talk, it's so late. And now if I double click lat and I double click long, we should get the point of interest mapped out on the map, which is correct here in New York. Let's zoom right in. I'm doing this in the browser, don't forget. So if you see any bugs or any sort of weird behavior, don't judge my skills, judge the browser. I've completely done something here. So let me just reset this. And double click lat and double click long. I think the issue I have here is that if I go in here and I just do this, let's just draw a nice little box there. Is it going to let me zoom? What's this? Why is it not? Oh, that's the selection. So sorry, I do need to do this. And there we go. That will let me zoom in again. That. Okay, so now we've zoomed right into New York. Excellent, this is working great. I'm just getting my bearings with web edit. It's just so confusing sometimes. If we get streets, now this looks more like a map, thank God. If you really want to check out some really cool things here, you can also switch over to the satellite view, which is super detailed. I mean, if you zoom right in, I can actually see that the latitude and longitude that Google gave me is slightly off. I don't know if Google and Mapbox disagree on the position of the Empire State Building, but the one I got from Google is over here, and Empire State Building you can clearly see on the satellite is over there. But that's fine for the purpose of what we're trying to do. It might also be to do with projections. Things are slightly off, but I'm not a mapping expert, so I won't pretend to know what's going on there. But nonetheless, it's good enough for the purpose of what we're trying to show. So let's go back to the streets. And now that we've done that, we can actually sort of go back out and let's actually start trying to solve the second half of the problem. If we now want to turn our attention to the buffer, the thing we're going to match against, we need to be able to use this point. So to do that, we'll just go ahead and create a new calculation. We'll call this buffer. And for this buffer, what you need to do, if we go down here to the, not to my face, to the drop down, let's just see if we can find spatial and buffer. The label for that is make point, the lat and long essentially, and then the distance and the kilometers. So to do that, what we're going to do, just to make this super easy, is we're going to go ahead and make a point using our lat long. So let's go ahead and make point, and we'll say lat, comma, long. We should actually really copy this and recreate the calculation. Now that we've made a point, we can go ahead and specify the next thing, which is going to be the distance. We'll just do 2 kilometers from this location, and we're going to specify this in kilometers. That needs to be in text. So let's go ahead and do that. Now that we've done that, we can go ahead and say this is our buffer. We'll come back to this to change it a little bit later, put a bit of a finesse on it. But I'll go ahead and actually, I need to grab this make point lat long here. I think I'm going to need this calculation again. So I'm going to copy it right now just to save me some trouble. But I think that's good. We can hit apply and hit OK. And now when we go ahead and actually try and visualize this, let's just go ahead and clear the map, clear this sheet. And we can just go ahead and visualize the buffer. You can see that that buffer is now really working nicely. So we've drawn a 2 kilometer radius. And what we can do is we can add one more thing. Let's add another parameter. This time we are going to keep it as an integer. We're going to give it a range. And we're going to start with a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 10. I think 10 is a healthy number. We're going to make sure we only go up in increments of 1 here and then click OK. And now that we've done that, we'll go ahead and show the parameter. And you'll notice if I give it a range, Tableau gives me a slider over here on the right-hand side. So if you're wondering where I'm looking, I'm over here, and you can sort of move this up and down. Now, the reason I've created this is because I want to put this parameter inside of my calculation to control the radius that I'm actually interested in. So if we go ahead and select OK, go back to my buffer, go in, edit that, and in here we can actually say radius. And now we have a dynamic way of changing the buffer size. So now if I go ahead and hit apply, you can see that it actually shrunk. And if I go ahead and shove it right up to 5, you can see the buffer region goes much larger. So now we're doing some sort of dynamic work here with parameters. This is really cool. I'll keep it to 1 because I think there's going to be a lot of trees in this area. So now the next thing that I've got this working is to bring in our trees. Now the trees themselves are kind of interesting because they are latitude and longitude points themselves. So you can see here, we've got latitude and longitude. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another calculation. This time I need to be very careful that I make point, this time to specify the tree location. So we'll call this tree locations. Okay, and for these 3 locations, we actually need to use the latitude. This time we need to use the proper latitude and the proper longitude, and we'll go ahead and use that. These were the ones that were in the data set. They're not the ones created dynamically from my parameter. So just be careful you don't get confused with everything that's called, whatever it is. And so now that we have that, we've got make point tree locations. That's going to give us a point for each of these, and then we can go ahead and hit apply, hit OK. And now I'm not going to visualize that because this is a really large data set. In fact, I'll just visualize it so you can see it. So if I just go ahead and just double click that, Tableau will try and visualize it. Now, I'm doing this in web edit, so I expect this to take time, but just so you know, this is, I think, a really large set of data. So something like 500,000 or 200,000 trees in this data set. And I'm doing this in the browser on a CSV that was uploaded. It took, quite a while, as you saw, 256 meg. I'm essentially just talking to fill the air here. If I can't fill it, I'll just go skip ahead to when this finishes. And there we go. You can see it's visualized. And this is sort of what I was worried about. I've got a lot of data points here. I can't really see anything useful. And the responsiveness of this whole application has just completely died. So this is what I was trying to avoid. Now, have I actually crashed my browser? This is now my new concern, that I've actually completely crashed what was going on here. We have made the page unresponsive. So let's wait and see what happens. I think it will come back to us, and we'll see what happens with web edit. There we go. So it's come back to us. It's gone back to the first sheet. I'm actually going to see if I can delete that sheet. Can I delete that sheet? Yes, I can delete it without going to it. Great. So what we're now going to do is we're going to use the new function, the intersect function. So the way this works is if we go ahead and type intersect, in fact, you can see a little description of it here, is it returns a Boolean when it matches to geometry. So what we can do is we can just go ahead and double click it, and we're going to see if the buffer that we created intersects with the tree locations. Okay, so if the tree locations fall within the circle, it's going to give us a true or false, a Boolean response. And that means we can say, okay, intersection. That means our trees are inside of this buffer area that we've drawn on the map using our dynamic slider. So we can say, okay, that's part of the intersection. So we can go ahead and click apply and then hit OK. And when we do that, you'll see it creates a new calculations just up here. It says true or false. We can actually drag that into the filters pane. So let me just go ahead and put that in there. And you'll see we'll get this option to select true or false from this list. Anything that doesn't match will be false. We only want the true items. So let's go ahead and hit apply. And now that we've done that, you can see that it's now sort of kicked into gear. Everything's working. Now what we can do is we can go ahead and go get our trees and put this on the map. So let's go ahead and get our tree locations, bring that in and add it to a second map layer. When we do that, we're actually able to generate the trees. And you can maybe just see behind this, you've got the dots that have turned up. And so you're probably wondering, well, how do I get the selection of trees? Well, we need to do a little bit of formatting here. The first thing I want to do is actually bring my tree locations to be above my buffer. And you can see that's actually already the case. If it wasn't the case, I could just move these around and swap them around. But in this case, it's actually already correct. My buffer's on the bottom. The next thing I'll do is I'll go ahead and set the buffer to orange, and I'll set it to a really like sort of pale color, just so you can just about see it, but it doesn't sort of get in the way of the visualization. So we kind of set it at pale. In fact, we can go for something a little bit sort of easier to see. Let's go for something like red. There we go. And the border, we can do a nice dark red border. So it's just much easier to see. And then for the tree locations, what we can do here is these individual items, you can see when I select one of them, all of them get selected. And that's because we've got nothing on detail to let you specifically select each tree. So we'll go ahead and get the tree ID. The tree ID is the identifier for the tree. We'll put that on detail. And what that will let me do is now select each and every individual tree. And now that we can do that, we can go and get the health of the tree. Let's go and get the health and put that on color just to give us a little bit of a more interesting visualization. And you can see that it's codified good in red, which in some cultures is actually a fair reflection of how it works. But what we'll do is we'll go ahead and use a slightly generic formatting here. We'll say fair should be pink, and we'll null. Is there anything sort of dull I can use? Let's just say null can be that color, poor can be black, and that's about it. And as you're making these changes, it's changing the formatting in the background. So there you go. You can see the trees and the formatting working really nicely. And if I then go ahead and change the radius, you can see that we do get a slightly bigger circle. So to answer the original question, how many trees are within 1 kilometer of the Empire State Building? The answer is 2,286, according to the 2015 tree census of New York. How amazing is that? Tableau letting us do that kind of analysis without having to go off into another tool. Now, the other thing I can do is, don't forget, I had other elements in my point of interest. If I end up showing the parameter here, you can see that I can switch the point of interest from Empire State to Times Square. Oh, not to that. Let's put it over here. Let's put my face over there. Let's go to Times Square. And you can see that everything gets redrawn because I've built the parameter around this sort of dynamism. So now I can go to another point of interest. I can bump it up. I can bump it down. And you can see that the radius will get bigger, bring in more trees. And again, I'm doing all of this in WebEdit, so it's super dynamic. And we even, interestingly, I don't think they included trees in Central Park because Central Park probably has its own tree census. So these are just trees not inside of Central Park. And you can see it's even catching some of the trees over in Long Island as well. So how cool is that? It's a really, really kind of cool feature set. Now, there's a couple of quirks here. When I first started using this, I'll put some sort of overlays on screen. The first thing I tried to do was I tried to bring in two data sets together that weren't related, and I tried to see if I could intersect data points and geometries from two separate data sets. That's actually not how this works. There's a sort of a limitation with the capability, and I think it's intended, and it actually makes a lot of sense once you get into it. And the reason is this: when you have two separate data sets, this calculation is working at a row level. And so when you're working with two data sets, you can't really get those things to work correctly. And then there's also an aggregation challenge that comes up. You might see this error message that says, look, you can't mix the aggregation levels. And that again is because you can't really sort of define to Tableau that these geometries are at different levels of detail. Everything needs to be on the same level of detail. And so that's why I've loaded everything into the parameter, because in the parameter, I can specify the points of interest and I can move those points around in space. The parameter is its own separate data set, but it can be dynamically fed into the visualization. And that allows me to then work with this. And so what you could do is you could use this as a way of sort of setting up a workbook. You could have maybe 15 locations. I think that's enough to be able to type those in, code those into a parameter. And once you've done it once, you don't have to do it again. The other thing I'm hoping they might do in the future is give you the way to sort of load a parameter with these locations, just specifically for this use case, because I think it's quite nice. But what I'll do is I'll put a link to a forum post that discusses this in a little bit more detail. I personally had help from other members in the community, specifically Jonathan Drummy, who actually explained this to me in a private thread that I can't really share here, but I'll link to a forum post that is public that pretty much explains the same thing, and you can get involved as well. So that's it. That's the feature. That's the Intersect function. It's allowing us to build some really cool capabilities. I'd love to see what you guys do with it. And another interesting thing, this wasn't actually included in the main release notes. So it's another example of capabilities that, get sneaked into the product, don't make it into the marketing, but are pretty much game changing. As ever, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you in the next one.